Hello everyone. I have my own thread over at the spoonyexperiment.com where people ask me questions. Most of the time they're silly, stupid questions, honestly, but I like answering those kinds because I kind of goof off with them. But I'm not asking you to go over there and ask me questions there. That is not the case. The only reason you should go over there is if you enjoy the works of the Spoony one. It's his website, it's his deal. So if you want to ask me questions specifically, ask me on YouTube. Don't go to his site just to ask me questions. That's silly. I'm just giving you a little bit of a backstory. But anyways, here's the question from Valve84. What are your all-time favorite games, and what are the worst games you've played? Well, that's a fairly in-depth question, honestly, and a little bit hard to answer in just a single post on that message board. So I decided to make these videos. First of all are the games that are my all-time favorites. Most of these are old games because I kind of feel I don't like to put a game on my favorites list if it's not fairly old, because after some time the new game shine wears off of it, and you get to see if it's really a game that stands up and can be replayed over and over when it's really old. So most of these games are old, and they're all going to be Nintendo products. I was a huge Nintendo junkie. That's about all I played. I had a Genesis, I think, but I lost that somewhere along the way, mainly because I didn't care for it as much. But these are all going to be Nintendo or PC, pretty much. So if you don't like either, sorry. Maybe you'll like the next part, the me complaining about games. But first up, games I think are my favorite out of the ones I own, so of course. First up, oh yeah, sure. Blaster Master. This is an awesome game made by Sunsoft, actually, and I had to get it used because I lost my copy when I was a kid, and I got it for $6. Oddly enough, I figured it'd be worth more, but whatever. The game is awesome. Well, in case you don't know, it has the most ridiculous plot I've ever seen in the game. You're a kid, and your pet frog jumps down, eats some radioactive waste, grows humongous, and then jumps down a hole. So you have to chase him down the hole. And when you fall down the hole, you find this huge tank and a suit, and you put the suit on and get in the tank and drive after your frog. The whole game is going to dungeons, beating enemies, getting power-ups to get to the next level, to do more dungeons, more power-ups, more fights. And the boss fights in this game are amazing. They can be incredibly difficult. The game itself can be incredibly difficult, but it is a very fun game. And I beat it when I was a kid, so you guys should be able to beat it too. But it is an incredibly awesome game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So if you find it used, I suggest that you go pick it up. I suggest you buy any of these games, honestly. So, anyways, moving on. Not this game specifically, but for Super Mario AllStars, simply because it has two of my favorite games on it. It has Mario 2 and Mario 3. And I love both of those games. I do not care that Mario 2 was apparently some game that was Indian themed, and then they just put Mario pixels on top of it and call it Mario 2. Don't care. Great game. Mario 3 is probably I'm going to say as good as Mario ever got. I want to say Mario Galaxy is, but like I said, it's a new Mario Galaxy. It's still got the new game shine on it, so I don't want to say that. Mario 3, favorite game of all time, for the Mario series at least. Moving onwards, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. If if you have never played this game, find some way to do it. Please, just find some way to play this game, because the game is incredible. I will say incredible. It's also got another opening plot which is fairly bad. It's basically you're getting called to by Princess Zelda. Your uncle decides he's going to go instead. He gets murdered. You take a sword and shield. Go save the world. Not to say that the plot in any Zelda game is incredibly in-depth or rational, but That one always struck me as a bit odd. But it's very good. It started the whole idea of going to the 3 temples to get 3 items, and after you do that, you get screwed over. So you have to go to a number of other temples to get other items, and on and on. It's a great game. If you don't know what Legend of Zelda is by now, I don't think I can ever explain it to you, sorry. I actually want to do these 2 back to back because they're in the same series of games. Final Fantasy 2, or 4 now, and Final Fantasy 3 or 6 now that we've caught up to the Japanese numbering system. Final Fantasy 2, first of all, because as a kid, I was always into swords and sorcery before I even knew what swords and sorcery were. But when I first saw the game on the shelf, I knew I had to have it because it had the word fantasy in its title, and it had a sword on it. So I was sure that some sword and sorcery fantasy was going to go on in this game. And it does. It's a great game. It's very simplistic as far as RPGs go today, but it had to be a great plot. It had a fairly good cast of characters, even though they would take away a character you really liked and gave you some crappy character. That happened more times in the game than I care to remember. It also has one of my favorite boss fights for the Final Fantasy series, which was the Magus Sisters. They were one of my favorite boss fights in the games. I've played all the Final Fantasy games, and it's one of my favorite boss fights still. Just because it was the first one that kind of talked back and forth to you and to each other, and it was really it was a difficult game for me to get through. Difficult fight for me to get through the first time I played it because I was a little kid at the time. The idea of killing this one before that one and this one last was a bit new to me, and that made me angry to no end when you kill 2 of them and then the last one's like, I want to bring them back to life, and they both come back to life. That was a bit annoying. But I hate what they did to them in the Final Fantasy X game, which I'm going to discuss when I get to that. Making them bugs. What was that? Was there a reason to make them bugs that came out of flowers? Never mind. I'm not going to get into a rant. Sorry. Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy III. That game was, to me, the peak of the Final Fantasy franchise. That's where it topped, and it's kind of gone downhill from there. I'm not saying Final Fantasy VII was bad, nor am I saying Final Fantasy IX was bad. They just weren't as good. 6 was kind of where it stopped, because I found that the characters, for the most part, there was maybe 1 or 2 I didn't enjoy that much. All the characters, they had their own backstories, they had their own motivations, they had their own personalities, and you got to see it all, even though there was a fairly large cast of characters, especially for back then. It also, as much as I don't care about graphics that much, it did look very visually impressive for the Super Nintendo, of course. I also like the magic system. The combat was awesome to me. They added a bunch of new stuff that I thought was really good, which was like the plot in the middle of battles where you guys would talk and jump around and stuff. They added Ultros, which is one of my favorite villains because he's a great source of comic relief throughout the game. You find him several times, and every time you fight him, every time I fought him the first time I played through, I was really happy because it meant that I was going to have another little goofy fight, and he was going to say more really cheesy lines of comedy. It was really funny to me to fight him every time. And Final Fantasy VI also has my favorite villain of all the Final Fantasy series, which was Kefka. Mainly because he wasn't some alien clone, he wasn't some just alien, he wasn't anything weird, he was just a human being that was driven insane. And because of that, he went around just mass murdering people. In fact, almost everybody. Because well, I'm not going to say the plot. For those of you who don't know the plot for Final Fantasy VI yet, I'm not going to spoil it for you. But Kefka is my favorite villain ever, and he's got my favorite villain's music for Final Fantasy VI. And that's another thing I have to talk about. Final Fantasy VI and 4, or 3 and 2, whatever, have great musical scores, even though they are only on the Super Nintendo. Great music. The first time I heard the boss theme on Final Fantasy 4, that was amazing to me because it was really the first time I heard something of that nature, that caliber in a game before. So the musical scores were great, the gameplay was great, the stories were great, the characters were great, everything was fun. So they are my favorites from the Final Fantasy series. And on the side note, since I'm almost out of time and I have to split this up into another video anyway, I am highly disappointed in modern RPGs. I find them to be lackluster, boring, lazy, not fun to play, and the characters are vastly just guys who look like women who I hate. So I haven't had my RPG fix on a new RPG for a long time, though I am going to talk about an RPG I absolutely hate. But I have more games to talk about that are good.